Hello and welcome to Mecha Anime Review. Without further ado, let's take a look at the original Mobile Suit Gundam, the show that started it all. I would explain the story for you, but I'd rather have the narrator do it for me.
It is the year 0079 of the Universal Century. A half-century has passed since Earth began moving its burgeoning population into gigantic orbiting space colonies. A new home for mankind, where people are born and raised, and die. 9 months ago, the cluster of colonies furthest from the Earth, called Side 3, proclaimed itself the Principality of Zeon and launched a war of independence against the Earth Federation. Initial fighting lasted over 1 month and saw both sides lose half their respective populations. People were horrified by the indescribable atrocities that had been committed in the name of independence. 8 months had passed since the rebellion began. They were at a stalemate.
The Zeons infiltrate one of the colonies in order to find out what the latest weapon from the Earth Federation is. When they're spotted, Amuro Ray, the son of one of the scientists from the Federation, pilots the Gundam in order to stop them. What follows is a series of events where Amuro gets further involved in the war, and eventually becomes more of a badass as it goes along. Meanwhile, Char Asimov plans to assassinate the Zabi family to gain revenge for his father's death. And that's the plot in a nutshell. First, the animation. At the time it must have been decent, but now it just looks awkward and stilted. It has mediocre animation at best. The music is kinda cool though. There are some genuinely memorable tracks and it's nice to listen to. The English dub is done by Ocean Group, which has generally done good and even great dubs, and this is no exception. Everybody does an excellent job in this show, with highlights being Brad Swaley as Amuro Ray and Michael Kopsa as Char Asimov. I'm kinda weirded out by the extra voices for the background characters, but it's a good dub overall. The last thing I'll say is that it seems like the dub is intentionally hamming it up so that it can fit in with the 70s animation. It works fine, I mean it sounds like a dub from the 70s, but just a small observation. I don't really know where to start with this review, so I guess I'll just note some stuff that I noticed. The majority of the story is mostly centered around the crew of the White Base as they travel from the Federation headquarters. In fact, for most of the show, they aren't even in space, it's mostly on Earth. This isn't really a problem, but something I noticed. I also noticed that the Federation doesn't suck in this story. Let me explain. The Federation in the typical Gundam story is usually portrayed as being either incompetent at best or no better than the Zeons at worst, which makes their portrayal here kind of weird and awesome at the same time. Now the good stuff. I like the focus on the White Base crew since it allows for more time on character development. I especially like the development on Amuro Ray, who starts out as a bit of an antisocial jerk to a true soldier who defends his friends and the Federation from the Zeons. While they don't get much development, I also like Sayla and Kai. They were kinda cool. Then we also have the infamous Char Asimov, the kinda main villain of the story. He doesn't really have much of a character to him, but he does have a lot of snarky things to say, and is generally a magnificent bastard all around.
Our fight is sacred, our cause divine. My beloved brother Garma Zabi was sacrificed. Why?
Because he was a spoiled brat.
War.
I understand why people like this version of Char, but it makes my eye roll. They keep bringing him back for future installments. The bad stuff comes mostly from the fact that there's too much filler. That's a weird thing to say since it's not based on a manga, but I do feel like there's a number of episodes that could have been removed entirely since they don't really add much to the story. And once the White Base crew returns to space, the drama becomes more and more soap opera-ish, getting kind of annoying. And eventually it gets to a point where you're pretty much begging for the show to end already. And the biggest problem is Lala Soon. Freaking Lala Soon. The entire new type thing was introduced for the sole purpose of making her death seem tragic, even though we know next to nothing about her character. And that's just terrible writing. This sort of character is used to a much better degree in Zeta Gundam in the form of 4 Murasame, so at least there's that. That being said, the show is actually quite good, if a little dated. The characters are interesting enough that we care about them, the story in itself is not that bad, and even has a kind of heartwarming ending. Combined with several means and decent battles, you have a satisfying beginning to a popular franchise. See you on the next Mecha Anime Reviews.